I woke up to the sound of helicopters, the familiar thump of blades overhead, the roar of engines, and the dust kicking up around the tents. Here, in the heart of the desert, every day began the same. I stretched on my cot, feeling the crackle in my back, and instinctively reached for my tablet. The signal on base was unstable, but each morning I checked for messages. Hope is stubborn like that. Maybe she had written today. Nothing. Again. I exhaled and stood up. Someone nearby cursed the heat. It was already hitting 100 degrees by 6 a.m. After splashing my face with cold water from a jerry can, I pulled out a letter. Old, with curled corners and speckled with sand. The last letter from Katie, my wife. Stay safe. I miss you. I love you. I read it for the 100th time. Back then, at our goodbye, she cried. So did I. We had been married for 3 years, and I'd spent more than half of that time deployed. You'll come back, and we'll start over, she said, holding me tight. Katie whispered, hugging me close. We'll build our house, open that cafe like we dreamed, and we'll get a dog, a white lab. She dreamed out loud, wiping tears off my cheeks. I promised I'd come back in one piece. For her. For us. The day blurred by. Patrol, briefing, the heat, a rare joke from Sergeant Garcia, and a dinner from a vacuum-sealed pouch. All routine. But something gnawed at me from the inside. We hadn't spoken in nearly a week. Usually she found a way. A short message, a voice memo, something. But now, silence. I told myself it was the network. That was a lie. I felt it. That night, I dreamed. I was standing in front of our house. Katie was waving from the porch, and then vanished. I ran inside, calling her name, but found only empty rooms and scattered photographs. I woke up in a cold sweat. When our story began, it felt perfect. We met at a charity fundraiser. She was volunteering at an animal shelter, and I was a new lieutenant, dragged there by a friend. She laughed when I spilled wine on myself, and that laugh stuck with me forever. Are you always this clumsy? She giggled, handing me a napkin. Only when there's a pretty girl nearby. I joked, trying to hide how flustered I was. From then on, we were inseparable. She moved in after 3 months, and 6 months later, we were married. A small wedding in her parents' backyard. I wore my uniform. She wore a simple white dress. We swore to love each other, no matter what. But military life wasn't a fairy tale. The first separations were hard. I left. She stayed. She always waited. Or so I thought. Are you sure you want to keep doing this? She asked one time when I was packing for another mission. Yes, it's my job. Our future. I nodded, looking her in the eyes. She nodded back, but something in her eyes was changing. Before this deployment, something was different. Our goodbye was distant, no tears, barely any words. Well, good luck then, Katie said, avoiding my gaze. You're not coming to the airport? I asked, surprised. I've got work, sorry. She shrugged. I kissed her on the temple. She didn't hug back. I chalked it up to stress. Thought it was normal. But now I knew. It was the beginning of the end. Sometimes I found myself replaying our old conversations in my head, looking for the moments I missed. When did she grow cold? When did the replies become shorter? When did she stop asking how I was? The answer was always the same. Too long ago. On the rare evenings I could get online, I checked her Instagram. The pictures had changed. Less cozy home vibes, more parties, restaurants, cocktails. At first, I was glad. It meant she was smiling. Then I noticed I was absent from almost all of them. Even mentions. Someone else was taking the pictures. Who? Who's the guy next to her? Sergeant Garcia asked, peering over my shoulder. Probably a coworker. She's in marketing. I muttered, hiding the tablet. He's got his arm around her waist. He squinted. I didn't respond. I didn't want to think about it. Her letters became fewer. The last one came 2 weeks ago. No sign-off? No, I love you? Just take care. Stay safe. Like it came from a coworker, not a wife. Cold. Plain. I started recording voice notes, even if they never went through. It became a ritual. I spoke into the void, pretending she was still listening. I'd tell her how the day went. Funny stories from the guys, how Garcia lost his helmet again. Remember when we wanted to go to Greece? I whispered into the mic one night, staring at the photo I kept in my pocket. The silence on the other end was deafening, but I didn't stop. Because I had to come back. Because words weren't just sounds. They were a vow. And I made one. To stay by her side, no matter what. I didn't know that there was no one waiting at home anymore. It was a dry evening when the email came in. We had just returned from a reconnaissance patrol. I was covered in dust, my hands shaking slightly as I unfastened my gear. The sun had barely set, casting long shadows across the desert. I checked my tablet out of habit. Low signal, 1 bar flickering, but the email icon was glowing. One new message. The subject line read, "Important divorce filing." I stared at it for a full minute before tapping. The email was short, cold, no greeting, no explanation. Just a series of sentences that didn't feel like they belonged in my life. "I've filed for divorce. Please don't try to contact me. I've already moved out. The house is sold. The money from our joint account is mine. It's over. Goodbye." No signature, no name, nothing. I read it again. And again. Each word cut deeper than the last. For a moment, I thought it was a cruel prank, a sick joke. But the address was real. It was her email. The same one she used to send me videos of our anniversary dinners, birthday wishes, photos of our dog. Wait, what dog? We never got one. My heart was pounding. My hands were clammy. I opened our bank app. The screen loaded slowly. And then I saw it. Balance. $0.00. The last transaction was a full withdrawal made 2 days ago, transferred to an external account. Her name was attached. I sat down hard. My knees had given out without warning. Around me, soldiers were laughing, joking, unpacking their weapons. But all I could hear was a low ringing in my ears. My marriage had just ended. Not with a fight, not with a conversation, not even with a goodbye. With an email. I tried calling her, blocked. I tried texting, green bubbles, undelivered. I tried social media. Her accounts were gone or I was blocked. I even tried calling her sister. No answer. I sent one last email. Why? I never got a reply. The days that followed blurred together. I went through the motions, briefing, patrol, meals. I kept my head down. I didn't talk to anyone. Garcia tried once. "You good, man?" Garcia asked, nudging me with his elbow. "Yeah, just tired." I muttered, avoiding his eyes. "You haven't said a word in 3 days. What's going on?" He pressed, frowning. I said I'm fine. I snapped, harsher than I meant to. He raised his hands and backed off. I felt like I was unraveling. The worst part wasn't the email. It wasn't the money. It was the feeling that the woman I thought I knew, who I thought loved me, had simply vanished, like she never existed. That night I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling of the tent for hours, replaying everything, every laugh, every touch, every promise. I should have seen it coming. I should have known. But I didn't. A week later, we were caught in a mortar attack. It came out of nowhere. Sirens screamed, the ground shook, and I was thrown back against a wall of sandbags. I blacked out for a moment. When I came to, there was blood on my face. Not mine, someone else's. We lost a man that day. Private Jenkins, barely 20 years old. He was supposed to go home next month. That night, as I cleaned my gear with shaking hands, I realized I didn't care if I made it home. I had nothing waiting for me. No home, no wife, no dog. Nothing. But deep down, something else stirred. Not anger, not yet. Not vengeance either. Just a question. What the hell happened? I began digging. Quietly at first. When I finally got stable access to the internet, I searched her name. And there she was, smiling, with another man, not even trying to hide it. He was holding her waist, just like Garcia said. She was laughing at some beach bar, drink in hand. The caption read, "Finally living my truth." I felt sick. I zoomed in on the photo. Behind them was a sign, some resort in the Maldives. The post was only 4 days old. She had flown to the other side of the world while I was dodging bullets in the dirt. I wasn't just replaced, I was erased. Coming home didn't feel like coming home. The airport was crowded, loud, families rushing to embrace their loved ones. I walked past them, alone, my duffel bag over my shoulder, and a silence in my chest that hadn't left since that email. No one was waiting. No welcome sign? No tearful embrace. Just a cold wind and an Uber driver holding a sign with my last name. "You're Mitchell?" The driver asked without looking up. "Yeah," I answered, stepping closer. The ride was quiet. I stared out the window as the city passed by. So much had changed, but I couldn't tell if it was the city or me. The last time I was here, I was still a husband. Still hopeful. Still someone. We pulled up to what used to be our home. My name was still listed on the property app, but it wasn't mine anymore. Someone else lived here now. The lawn was different, better kept. A new car in the driveway, curtains drawn. I didn't get out. I just watched the front door, half expecting it to open, half hoping it wouldn't. After a minute, I told the driver to keep going. "Changed your mind?" The driver asked, glancing at me. "Yeah, it's not home anymore." I murmured. I checked into a cheap motel near the outskirts of town, the kind of place with flickering lights and paper-thin walls. But it was quiet. And I needed quiet. The next few days were a blur of appointments, paperwork, and uncomfortable silences. I met with the military liaison to discuss benefits, tried to access my accounts, still empty, and finally, I contacted a lawyer. His name was Daniel Huang. Former Navy, now practicing family law. He didn't ask unnecessary questions. Just looked me in the eye and said, "We'll get to the bottom of this." Daniel said calmly, "I don't care about the money. I want to know how she did it. How she sold the house. Took everything while I was deployed." I said, my voice low, "She must have had power of attorney. Did you sign anything before you left?" He asked, leaning back in his chair. I thought back. The papers. The ones she said were just in case of emergencies. I never read them. Just trusted her. "Yeah, I did," I muttered. Daniel didn't react. Just nodded and made notes. "She couldn't have done this alone. Someone helped her." I continued, my fists clenched. "She had a lawyer. Probably a good one. But you've got me now. We'll reopen everything. The divorce, the asset transfers. If there was fraud, we'll find it." He promised. That was the first time in weeks I felt something close to hope. Over the next month, Daniel worked on gathering records. I slept little, ate less, spent most of my time scrolling through her social media, what little of it I could still access. The man she was with, his name was Brent, a tech consultant. According to his LinkedIn, he lived in California, but had recently relocated to explore new opportunities. Probably code for, "moved in with my wife." I created a burner account and messaged one of her old coworkers, someone named Leah. "Hey, sorry to reach out like this. Just trying to understand what happened with Katie. She kind of disappeared." Leah replied within the hour. "Honestly?" We were all shocked. "She changed overnight. Started dressing different, stopped talking about you. One day she said she was done being a military wife ghost. Whatever that means. Then she quit. I heard she took a buyout from your cafe." The cafe. Our dream. We had started it 2 years before I deployed. She had run the daily operations while I was gone. I assumed it had been shut down or sold. Now I knew the truth. She cashed out and vanished. Daniel got the paperwork a week later. Not only had she sold the cafe, but she had done it under a new LLC she registered in her name alone, using documents I had unknowingly signed. "She bled you dry," Daniel said, laying the papers in front of me. "She planned this for months," I whispered, staring at the signatures. "Longer, probably, but we've got leverage. Some of this was shady, questionable timing, maybe even criminal. We just need proof." He added, "What happens if we prove fraud?" I asked. "Could reverse the divorce ruling, maybe even reclaim assets. But more than that, we get your side on record. We give you your voice back," he said firmly. But I didn't want revenge. I wanted answers. I found them one evening in the most unexpected place: my voicemail. Somehow my old number still worked, and buried between spam calls and outdated messages was one from her mother. "I don't know what she told you, but this wasn't right. You didn't deserve that." I tried to stop her. "I'm sorry." She hung up before I could call back. I drove across the state the next morning. She lived in a quiet retirement community. When she opened the door and saw me, she froze. "I just want to talk," I said, hands up. She let me in. Her house smelled like lavender and old memories. We sat at the kitchen table, neither of us speaking for a while. Then she finally said, "She changed, Mitchell. After you left. Started saying things like, 'This life isn't mine,' or 'I'm done playing house for a uniform.' She stopped calling me, stopped calling anyone." Her voice trembled. "Was there someone else?" I asked. "Yes, Brent. He was a client at the cafe, charming, rich, promised her the world." She nodded slowly. "She gave up everything for him." I said bitterly. "She gave up you. That was the real mistake." She corrected. I left with a hollow ache that no court win could fix. But I wasn't done. I went to the cafe, now renamed, rebranded, with no trace of our history. I walked past the front windows, where our logo used to be. Inside, Brent sat at a table, laptop open. Katie was beside him, laughing at something on the screen. She saw me. Her smile dropped. I didn't go inside. I didn't need to. The next day, I gave Daniel the go-ahead to proceed. We were taking them to court. Not for vengeance. For truth. For closure. The courthouse was colder than I expected. Not the temperature, the atmosphere. Sterile. Formal. Stripped of emotion. Like pain wasn't welcome here. I sat on the left side of the courtroom, Daniel beside me, reviewing notes one last time. Across from us, Katie and Brent. She wore a beige blazer, hair pulled back. He wore a smug expression and a Rolex that probably wasn't his. "She doesn't look nervous," I muttered without taking my eyes off her. "She will," Daniel said, flipping to the next tab in the folder. The judge entered, and everyone rose. Honorable Judge Connolly. Older, sharp-eyed, the kind of man who didn't tolerate games. We sat. The case began. Daniel opened with clarity. He presented the timeline. My deployment, the documents I signed under the impression they were for emergency purposes, the sudden transfer of funds, the sale of our business, and the suspiciously timed divorce. Your Honor, we are not just talking about betrayal. We are talking about a coordinated effort to dismantle a man's life while he served his country overseas. This wasn't an impulsive decision. It was a calculated campaign. Daniel stated firmly. Katie's attorney, a sleek, fast-talking woman named Morgan, stood next. She painted Katie as lonely, abandoned, forced to rebuild her life while I was gone. She referenced emails, vague notes about my emotional absence, and emphasized that everything was within legal bounds. She had power of attorney. Every transaction was lawfully executed. My client acted out of necessity. Morgan argued confidently. The judge didn't react, just nodded. Then it was Katie's turn. She walked to the stand slowly, carefully, like someone walking through glass. Her lawyer asked her rehearsed questions, and Katie answered them like she had practiced in front of a mirror. "I was scared, Your Honor. I was alone. He never called. He never asked how I was. I felt like a widow, not a wife," Katie said, her voice soft and calculated. "Did you try to reach out to him?" Morgan asked, pretending to sound concerned. "I did, but he was always unavailable. Emotionally, physically, he was gone long before I filed." She answered, eyes lowered. Daniel leaned towards me. "She's good, but not honest." He whispered. My turn came next. I stood, hand on the railing, the courtroom blurring slightly at the edges. "Mr. Mitchell, you were deployed during the time your wife filed for divorce and emptied your joint accounts?" Daniel asked, voice steady. "Yes." I nodded, holding Katie's gaze. "Were you aware she had sold your shared business under a different LLC registered in her name?" He continued. "Number I found out when I got back," I said, my voice hollow. "And did you ever grant her full authority to sell or transfer your assets without your explicit approval?" Daniel asked again. Number I trusted her. I never thought she'd do this. I replied, throat tightening. Then Daniel introduced the evidence. Email records, bank statements, the digital fingerprint trail showing she'd planned the sale months before she even told me we had financial issues. And finally, screenshots. Photos of her vacation with Brent, taken while I was still overseas, some posted within days of the divorce being filed. Katie's expression faltered. The final blow came from a witness we hadn't announced in advance. Leah. She walked into the courtroom like a storm in heels. Sat down. Took the oath. "Ms. Lee, did Katie ever mention her intention to leave her husband before the deployment?" Daniel asked. "Yes. She told me 3 months before he even left that she was waiting until he was gone, so she could make a clean break." Her words. Leah said, eyes locked on Katie. "Did she ever mention the cafe or plans to cash out?" Daniel pressed. "She said Brent told her to liquidate before it gets complicated. She wanted it all wrapped up before her husband could interfere." Leah answered clearly. Katie didn't even look at her. When the judge called for recess, I stepped outside to breathe. The sky was gray. The air thick. Brent followed me. "You think you're gonna win? You've already lost everything, man." Brent sneered, standing too close. "I lost a liar. That's not the same thing," I said quietly. He scoffed and walked away. The final statements came that afternoon. Morgan tried to spin everything as emotional survival, but the damage was done. The facts were in black and white. Daniel kept it short. No amount of heartbreak justifies deceit. You can leave a marriage, but you don't get to loot it like a sinking ship, he said, closing his folder. The judge asked for silence. He looked at both sides, then read from a small sheet of notes. While the initial divorce filing was technically legal, the evidence presented indicates a pattern of deception and financial manipulation. The court hereby invalidates the original divorce settlement, pending reassessment of all asset divisions. The power of attorney was misused. This will be rectified. Then he paused and added, "Mr. Mitchell, you will be granted temporary injunction over the business assets until formal redistribution is complete." I exhaled. Not a full win, but more than I expected. Katie didn't look at me. Brent had already left the room. Outside, the sky finally cleared. Sunlight touched the top of the courthouse like an afterthought. Daniel clapped me on the back. "You still standing? That's a win in my book," he said, smiling. "Feels more like breathing after drowning." I replied. But deep inside, something had shifted. I wasn't chasing her anymore. I was rebuilding without her. 6 months passed before I saw her name again. It popped up in my inbox like a ghost, faint, familiar, and completely unwelcome. The subject line was blank. The body of the message was short. "I'm sorry. I made a mistake. Can we talk?" I didn't reply. By then, the dust had already settled. The court ordered a full reassessment of our assets, and while I didn't get everything back, I recovered most of what she tried to steal. Half the cafe's profits from the sale, part of the home equity, and restitution for the unauthorized withdrawals. Brent had disappeared from her life before the court even ruled. Word was, he'd taken off with a different woman, and with what little money they hadn't burned through at resorts and wine bars. I didn't feel vindicated. I didn't feel angry anymore either. Just done. I used the money not to rebuild the old life, but to start a new one. Not out of spite, but out of necessity. The cafe was long gone, but something better rose in its place. I leased a small space in a quiet part of town and opened a new business, a place for veterans to connect, work, and get legal advice. Daniel became a regular presence there. So did Leah. She left her job at the old firm and started helping us run community outreach. "You think this will stick?" Daniel asked one day, sipping coffee on the back patio. "It already has," I replied, watching a young guy in uniform laugh with an older vet over a game of chess. At first, I was worried I'd never feel anything again. But little by little, something returned. Not like before, better, sharper, more deliberate. I started sleeping again, eating real food. I stopped flinching every time my phone buzzed. One afternoon, I got a letter in the mail. Handwritten. From Katie. It wasn't long. She said she was sorry for everything. That she didn't know what she wanted back then. That she thought Brent would fix something broken in her. That he didn't. That nothing did. I lost more than just a marriage. I lost the only person who ever really saw me. She wrote. She asked if we could meet. Just once. I folded the letter carefully and put it in a drawer. I didn't answer. I had nothing left to say. Not out of bitterness. Out of peace. The real closure came later, in a moment I didn't expect. I was locking up one evening when a young soldier knocked on the front door. He looked barely 20, still stiff in posture, eyes nervous. I let him in, gave him water, and we sat at the bar. "I heard you help guys like me. I just got back. Don't really know where to go." He said quietly, "You came to the right place," I said, nodding slowly. His name was Trevor. He'd served in the same region I had. Lost his best friend in an ambush. Wasn't talking to his family. Said he didn't feel real anymore. Everything's loud and hollow, you know, like I'm walking through someone else's life. Trevor admitted, staring into his glass. "Yeah, I know that feeling," I said softly. I didn't tell him everything, but I told him enough. About betrayal, about survival, about getting up even when you don't want to. He didn't cry, but his hand stopped shaking. Later, as he was leaving, he turned and said, "Thanks, man." I don't know what I expected, but this wasn't it. I didn't expect to be here either, I admitted with a tired smile. That night, I stayed behind after closing, sat in the quiet space I had built with my own 2 hands. I looked around, photos on the wall, a chalkboard with job listings, an old metal case someone donated, a worn couch that always had someone sleeping on it. I thought about what I'd lost. Then I thought about what I'd gained. Katie had taken my home, but I had built a better one. She had taken my name off our future, but I'd written it onto something real. And in the end, that was enough.